Hello, Tubby and Coos fans. It is me, Candace, again, coming at you live from my office. And tonight I'm really excited to bring you an author event for an epic fantasy author that I'm excited to introduce you to. So I'm going to introduce her and give people a couple of minutes to join. So tonight I am talking to Sarah Kozloff, who is the author of the Nine Realms series. And the Nine Realms series began with a book called A Queen in Hiding, which was released in January of this year. Her new book is out today. It is the fourth and final book in the series, and it's called The Cerulean Queen. And what's really cool about this series is that it was 4 books released in 4 months. The first book was released in January. The fourth book was released today. So it was a very quick, rapid release. And I think this is the perfect series to binge, especially now that all 4 books are out. It is a really good series for you just to sit and read and have fun with. So the Nine Realms traces the journey of Cerulia, the princess of Weirandale, from attempted assassination and exile all the way to her triumphant but bloody return to the throne and her magic birthright. And so that's a little bit about the Nine Realms series. Sarah Kozloff holds an endowed chair as a professor of film history at Vassar College, and she worked in the film industry in both TV and film before becoming a professor, which is really interesting as well. We're going to talk to her a little bit about that. And A Queen in Hiding was her first debut. It was her debut fantasy novel. And I think she certainly brings a cinematic eye to this series and this epic fantasy. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you for being with us today. I'm so excited to have you.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for that kind introduction, Candace.
You're welcome. And so while people are joining, can you tell us a little bit about the book series, The Nine Realms?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a classic epic fantasy. Somebody described it as a traditional epic fantasy for the 21st century, which I like because yes, I was working off of many of the most standard tropes. The queen has been dispossessed and she has to get her way back. And are people going to be allies or foes? And animals talk. And there are betrayers and there are spirit god type creatures. But in other ways, I really wanted to update it. Her kingdom is a matriarchy. It's a queendom. People kept talking to me about a kingdom, and I said, no, it's that queendom. That's why it's called the Nine Realms instead of the Nine Kingdoms or something like that. And one of the themes has to do with water pollution. So there's all sorts of themes and characters that are less traditional, even though the framework should ring a lot of, I hope, very comfortable, familiar bells.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself too, before we really dig into the Nine Realms? Like what I usually ask is, can you tell us like maybe 3 things about yourself that you think everyone should know?
That's hard. Well, you already know that I taught film at Vassar College for 31 years. So there's a lot of references to movies in the books. There are a lot of animals in the books because I'm one of those people who's gaga over my dog. And I also like to garden. I really do like to garden.
Awesome. And so we want to engage y'all as well who are watching. So we're going to start off with a little bit of a poll too. And so it'll show up on your screen, but the poll is, do you binge read? So if you binge read, because this is definitely a binge worthy series, you can click yes or no. It should be showing up on your screen right now. So let's see how many people binge read. And while we're getting that, we're going to talk to Sarah about the Nine Realms series because I'm excited. So my first question is, of course, this is 4 books in 4 months. So I really, really want to know your writing process for this. Like, did you write all these books at once? Did you pitch this in this way? Was this the publisher's idea? Can you tell us the story behind this?
Okay, so you have to know that although I'm, of a certain age and had a certain career, I am a total novice at creative writing. And I literally did not know that people wrote the first book and then pitched the series. I didn't know
Wow.
that's how it was done. I thought you wrote the whole thing. And the only writers I knew their process, I knew that Tolkien had written the whole thing. So I sat down, this is 7 years ago. I sat down and started writing. I didn't know whether it was going to be 2 books or 3 books or 4 books. Turned out to be 4. I wrote the whole thing. Then I found an agent, and she pitched it as a completed set. And as you know, at this moment, when some works have not been finished, and some readers feel very, very disappointed that the series hasn't been finished, there was something attractive about having the end at the back of the Cerulean Queen. There was no question that I knew where it was going, and I had gone there. So the idea to do it rapid publication was not mine. That was my editor at Tor, Jennifer Gunnels. And she said, well, as long as you have them all, let's put them out 1 a month. That was fine, in that while I was revising it with her, number 1 had not yet been published. So I could keep going back to A Queen in Hiding and plant little seeds, or change a name, or change something, all the way through to my end of book 4. I could tinker with book 1. Then the production process, you'd have to ask the poor production department at Tor. That was a little wild. We were copy editing 1 book while I was doing first pass pages of another, and then second pass pages of another. And that, I think it was a little bit of a strain.
Yeah, that sounds wild, to be editing that many books at the same time. I cannot imagine. But I guess you got through it.
So at one point, the crunch was when I was teaching last semester, and I pride myself. I've never missed a deadline, and I didn't miss any of Tor's deadline. But once I did send a plaintive email. You're killing me. You're killing me. I lived.
You did, and hopefully it is paying off for you with this series. So let's kind of dig in a little bit. Why did you choose to write fantasy specifically? Like, what about genre fiction appeals to you as a writer?
I've always loved genre, and this, I think, is comes a little bit from my film background. There's no snobbery against genre in film studies. I teach musicals, I teach westerns, I teach film noir, and nobody says, that's not as good as art film. It's just an accepted form. And then if I was going to write a novel, I've always read fantasy, and I've always loved it, and always felt that although it is an escape, you can make social statements in a way that's not very dogmatic or heavy-handed. I think fantasy is the perfect genre. Besides, I failed. Well, I didn't fail. I had to do, non-graded option of my one physics class. So sci-fi was not for me.
That's fair. I like both, but the magic of fantasy certainly appeals to me as well. So about the series, I'm curious about your magic system, because I think the magic system in this series is particularly interesting, and in that you know, at the very beginning of the book, the princess, the very beginning of the first book, I should say, the princess is brought in for what you call definition. So I'm curious as to your magic system and how you came up with it, how you built it, where the different disciplines came from.
A lot of things, and this is true of all authors, I think, are sort of pastiche of things you've read and seen and known. And the idea that Nargis would give each one of the queens a talent, a special talent, that comes from my vague memory of Sleeping Beauty. And when the baby is born and all the witches come and give her presents, and then the bad witch says she'll die, and then the best witch says, no, she won't die, she'll just sleep, right? So the idea that when the baby is born, there are these magical forces which decide what is going to happen, what talent she might have. That stuck with me. And I liked the idea that Nargis, who is the spirit of fresh water, always knows what troubles are going to beset the kingdom. And she always chooses a talent that will help the most with what's about to happen. And it depends on the queen. At about age 4 or 5 or 6, the public starts to figure out what the queen's talent, what the princess's talent is. But when we start A Queen in Hiding, Cerulia doesn't seem to have a talent. So that was just a little, you find out that doesn't last very long, but it was a nice place to start.
Yeah, and that was pretty neat that at the very beginning it sort of draws you in, because it's like, well, the princess is clearly supposed to have something, but she's way older than princesses usually are when this sort of comes out, and she doesn't have anything. So it does start you off wondering, like, oh, how is this going to play out? You know, like, is she going to have anything? Is this going to be a case where she doesn't, and then she has to figure it out? Like, so that drew me in. I thought it was really interesting.
Good. I have to tell you that the whole idea of everyone having a talent, and this goes through all 4 books, and it's not just the princess or royal people. People find, as they go along in the series, people find out that they have certain talents. That actually comes from being an advisor of so many college students. And having so many college students come into me when they're freshmen or sophomores and say, I don't know what I'm going to major in. I don't know what I'm good at. And I have to say, wait, you're only a freshman. You're only a sophomore. We'll figure it out. Pretty soon, we'll know. And that's what happens in the 9 realms.
That actually makes so much sense now that you say that you're an advisor of college students and helping them figure out what their discipline is, that crossed over. It makes so much sense now.
I hope any of my students are listening. I'm giving away all my secrets.
So just for a fun question, if you could have any magical discipline from your world, what would it be and why?
Oh, I'd really love Cerulia's talent. And should I tell it and be a spoiler, or should I wait and make people read and find out? I'll leave it mysterious. I would like Cerulia's talent.
Cerulia's talent.
What I really am not interested in, and I don't understand why so many fantasy books go there, I don't want to fly. Every fantasy book, someone gets to fly on top of a dragon, or they eat copper and they get to fly. I don't want to fly. Thank you.
Why don't you want to fly? Is there a particular reason?
Maybe I have fear of heights, but it's not appealing to me.
That makes sense. I mean, different things, I guess, are appealing to different people. Yeah. I'm not sure what magical discipline I wish I had. There's so many. I've always, if I could have a superpower, I know I'd want to be invisible. I think invisibility would be a really interesting one to have. I can tell you what I do not want to be is psychic. I do not want to hear people's thoughts. Like, I think that would be so overwhelming. Like, I have no desire.
Right.
I'd rather invisibility, because then I can like listen in, but I don't have to actually hear your thoughts.
Right, right. Well, the queens have whatever sort of struck my fancy. One of the queens is Carmina the Perseverant. She just doesn't give up, and which is a major talent to have. And there's another queen. There's an appendix at the back. Historic queens of Weirandale. Kateri the Swimmer. I like to swim. And she saves the realm. I haven't really worked that out, but somehow she saves the realm by swimming over a bay. Yeah. Anyway.
So how did you do your world building? I'm interested to hear your world building process as well, and what your influences were in building the world, because I think your world is pretty rich and interesting. So what were your influences there, and how did your world come about?
It came about slowly. I am, you could call me a pantser, or what I prefer, I'm a discovery writer. I just sort of bumbled into things and then went back and refined it. But I was, I am a gardener. I was thinking about the natural world and climate change and everything about. So I was moving towards nature spirits. And then I was thinking that sort of nature spirits kind of meshed with Greek gods in the sense that they have conflicts with one another.
Right.
The part that I think is most original is that the spirits or gods never appear, and they cannot really act directly in the human world. They have certain people that they choose based on their loyalty or whatever, who are their agents. And I think of the agents as like real estate agents, that they act for their principles. They act in the interests of their principles. So once I had that figured out, it just went from there. I knew I wanted to be pre-modern. Wasn't exactly sure how you would compare it to, our world. It was my editor at Tor that told me to use 1650 as basic historical marker, which I did. And I liked that because I could have the printing press. But I took some liberties, even though they had cannons and guns in the 17th century. There are no cannons or guns in my world. It's my world. I got to set the rules.
Right. And so the world, did the world come to you first, or was there a character that came to you first? Did the plot come? Like, kind of how did this start, and then everything else populate around it?
Okay, so here's the real story. A lot of people lie, but I have to keep telling the truth, because someday it'll come back and bite me if I don't. I loved Lord of the Rings. I was in a class teaching a seminar about feminism in film, and we were looking at a list of movies that could not pass the Bechdel test. Just in case any of your viewers don't know, the Bechdel test is a very low bar of female representation in a story. You have to have 2 female characters who actually have names and who actually talk to each other about something else besides the main character, man. And the Lord of the Rings can't pass the Bechdel test, because although you have Galadriel and Arwen and Eowyn, they never talk to each other.
That's right.
I was sitting in class, I was looking at this chart about the Bechdel test, and I said, I'm going to write an epic fantasy. And it's going to be about the return of the queen, not the return of the king. because I loved the whole Aragorn subplot where he roams around Middle Earth in disguise as Strider, and nobody knows who he really is. All that is gold does not glitter. And so that was the genesis of the whole thing. And then here now, today, finally, can you see on your camera what it says?
Oh yeah, the Return of the Queen.
So that was the plot. That was what I was aiming for from the first page.
That is super interesting. And I had sort of seen that mentioned in a couple of interviews that I read that you did, that the Bechdel test sort of inspired. So it's cool to hear that story, that you were just inspired by the Bechdel test to like write something that actually passed it. I think that that's cool.
I claim this is, I mean, there's been many fantasy writers who've done this before, but I wanted to do mine. So
sure.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool too. And so as we've said, you're a film history professor at Vassar. So does film influence your writing in any way? Like, how do those things intersect?
So many ways. Sometimes I thought that, hold on one sec. Queen of Raiders, which is book 2. Sometimes I think it's a Western. And sometimes I think I wrote it the way I wrote it because I love Western so much. So there's this whole genre influence. And the Cerulean Queen, a whole big portion of it is a musical because there's this festival with all this music and dancing in it. So there's that. Then I think I see images. I don't have long description, but I do see the action as shots in my head. And that seems to be coming across. Also, although this seems kind of contradictory, but it shouldn't be. As a scholar, my main interest is in dialogue, film dialogue. So when I was writing the dialogue for the books, I kept thinking, what would it be like to hear an actor say this? Is this something someone could say? Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool too. And because I do think it comes across. I think that, your books are pretty cinematic. You can sort of see and imagine everything pretty clearly that's going on. So it doesn't surprise me that you imagine these scenes as like a movie in your head, because I do think it comes across. It didn't surprise me to learn that you're a film professor. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
There are whole moments that are just stolen from movies, stolen from Hitchcock, stolen from The Seven Samurai, stolen from To Kill a Mockingbird, lines of dialogue. It's my book. I can put this line of dialogue in here. So I did.
And I'm also curious as to your writing process. I know we talked about the process of publishing these books. So has this whole experience, or I guess how has this whole experience changed your writing process, or has it at all?
Well, for one thing, I found writing fiction much easier than writing scholarship. Because there's this internal censor every sentence you write in a scholarly manuscript. Is somebody going to say this isn't right? Have I footnoted it correctly? Am I making too sweeping a statement? Whereas if I say no one knows what Cerulia's talent is, no one knows what Cerulia's talent is. So there was that. But also, someone asked, this is not exactly what you asked, but how the process of writing the books had changed me. And I think it's sort of interesting that all my life, obviously, I loved literature and film. I've devoted my life to literature and film. But I didn't think that I had a scintilla of creativity in me. I thought I was just someone who admired other people. and to sit down and try to do it and be successful enough to be published, 4 books published, changed my idea of what you can do in your life, even when you think you know what your talents are, even when you're, in your 60s, you can try and do something else.
And I think that's amazing. And what a discovery for you. And I'm so glad you discovered this, because I hope you write more things. And so on that note, what's next for you? Are you working on anything currently?
I've finished. I'm not a slow writer. I've finished another book. It's with my agent right now.
Awesome.
It's also speculative fiction, but that's all I'll say for now. Yeah, but
yeah, sure.
I have it done.
That's amazing that you've already written another book. You're super fast.
I like it. And often on Twitter, social media, I see people saying, oh my God, I didn't write enough today. Oh, I have to go write. Well, no one's making you write. If you aren't getting joy out of it, find what gives you joy.
Yeah, I totally agree.
There were very few days that I didn't want to do it. Sometimes I didn't want to see all the errors the copy editor had found, because I'm supposed to be a professor and I'm supposed to know all of this. And sometimes working through the first rough draft is like walking up a very steep hill. But after that, it's all just fun.
And I think you can tell that you had fun. It's fun to read these books. So for me, I think I could tell that you had fun writing them. And that's always something that comes through for me. When authors have fun writing a book, I can tell, and then it makes me have fun reading it. So I think that's...
Candace, there are a lot of moments where I was trying to be funny. I mean, maybe not laugh out loud funny, but chuckle funny. Did you find it funny?
I think definitely it had its moments of funniness for sure. I mean, I wouldn't call the whole thing humor, but it definitely had its chuckle moments, as you say. Yeah. And so what are you currently reading? Do you have any book recommendations for us?
Right now, I'm actually reading The Education of Brett Kavanaugh, because I'm very interested in politics. I follow it very carefully. So I'm reading that. I recently read Ronan Farrow's Catch and Kill, which, yeah. But in terms of fantasy, the best fantasies I've read recently were Naomi Novik's. Have you read Spinning Silver?
I haven't read. I read Uprooted, but I haven't read Spinning Silver yet. But I've heard it's so good.
I think it's twice as good as Uprooted. And so I'm really looking forward to her next. She's got some series about a magician's school coming out soon. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to Empire of Gold. Because, yeah.
So yeah, for readers who may not know, Empire of Gold is the third book in a series. The first book is City of Brass, which I recommend all the time at the store. If you talk to me, I'm always recommending City of Brass to everyone. And Empire of Gold is the third book in the series, which is going to wrap everything up. So I'm really excited for that one too.
Out any day now. I mean, this spring. Yeah.
Yes, it is coming out this spring. Yeah. So I also want to put some questions out to the audience. So if y'all have any questions, please feel free to comment on the stream. We can bring the questions up. If y'all have any questions for Sarah, we can do that. In the meantime, while we're waiting for people to submit questions, I also want to bring some stuff up on the screen. So again, Queen in Hiding, I'm going to hide my own face for this. Queen in Hiding is the first book in the Nine Realms series. And the most recent book, the one that came out today, is the Cerulean Queen, and it's the fourth book and the last book in the series. So you can currently binge all of them. Here are all four books: Queen in Hiding, Queen of the Raiders, Broken Queen, and Cerulean Queen. And you can get all four of them today, which is really exciting because you can just read them all. You don't have to wait for them to come out, which is what's cool about this series. You don't have to wait 4 years to get the whole thing.
They're all about 500 pages long, which I like, because if I'm going to buy a book, I want something that's going to take me far, far away for a long time. And sure. And they're paperback, and that was on purpose so that you could buy all four and it wouldn't, take a chunk out of your wallet.
Yes, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it is true. All four are in paperback, and they are long, so then you can stay in the world for a long period of time.
This world behind, right?
Absolutely, which we all need right now, if we're being honest. Yes. And you can buy all of these books at our bookshop site. I actually have a list for upcoming author events, and all four of Sarah's books are there. So if you visit that, you can buy books. And Sarah did say that she would assign book plates for us. So if you want a signed book, you can email us and let us know at info@tubbyandcruise.com, and we can coordinate with Sarah to get you a personalized signed book if you're interested in that as well. So thank you, Sarah, for doing that for us.
It's the least we can do.
So we have this question here from Nicole. If you could create a film or TV show out of your books, who would you want to direct it?
A woman. There's so many great women directors. I don't know who. I mean, you want someone who loves fantasy, and that's a little hard to find because, for instance, I love Ava DuVernay, but right before she did A Wrinkle in Time, she said she had never seen a fantasy movie, never read a fantasy book. And I thought that was a little, I mean, yes, it'll make it more her vision and more creative. But if you love the genre, you want someone else who loves the genre, right?
Sure.
So I would want a woman director who loves fantasy. And I actually think it should be a TV show because there's a lot of characters, a lot of material. I think it could be 3 or 4 years and then done. It has an ending, guys. It has an end. It won't be continued indefinitely. We know it will stop, and that the ending will not be made up by screenwriters on the fly.
Which is another plus, is that it's done, and there won't be other people making it up. All the source material is there already. So Nicole also wants to know, how did you become a professor after working in the film industry?
I went to graduate school, and first I was working in the film industry, and you'd think that'd be so exciting and so much fun. It's boring. And it's tiring. I was hanging out on sets 6 days a week, 16 hours a day. I could not get my laundry done. I got this stress rash all over my face. I couldn't even go to a doctor to get it taken care of. And nothing I was doing. I was getting equipment. I was getting people. I was getting lunch. I was getting music rights. Whatever. I felt like I could be a supply sergeant in the Army. Nothing I was doing had any intellectual or artistic side to it. So I went to graduate school at Stanford, and now it all seems fated that I got a degree in literature and film, both together. It was an interdisciplinary program. So
that's That's cool too. A cool story. Because you would think that the film industry would be a little bit more creative, right? But I guess, not in every case.
After you've been in it for 15 years, after you've paid all your dues. Yeah.
I guess that makes sense too. Like a lot of industries like that are similar. And look, one more from Nicole. How do you get in the zone before you start writing? What is your writing environment like?
Oh, well, I'm lucky. My husband and I have a house in the country, and we had 2 sons, and they grew up and left us, which I'm not lucky about. But the downstairs now is empty and quiet, and one of the downstairs rooms is my office, and I have a big picture window out into my garden, and I come down here first thing in the morning with my coffee. I don't say hello to my husband. Often I don't even feed the dog. I come down with my coffee, freshest time of the day, and I don't emerge until I'm hungry.
That makes sense to just start it off. Just do it at the beginning of the day.
Start there, and then by 11 or 12 or 1, I feel I've put in a great day of work, and I can do whatever else I want with the rest of the day.
That is a good plan, I think. Okay, we have a question from Jeremy. Jeremy wants to know, are you finding it difficult to be creative during the time of COVID, or are you finding inspiration? And if you're finding inspiration, where are you finding it in?
I'm not finding it hard to be creative. I'm not finding it hard to write because I don't know, I can just concentrate on that. I am finding it hard to read. I don't know about anybody else. Are you, Candace? I'm finding it hard to read books sometimes. Yeah. And the inspiration is just, I have a store of memories of books, of movies, of life. And you just rummage around and make different reconnections.
Yeah, I am definitely finding it hard to read. And it's hard for me because, of course, I love to read. It's my job. And I am, finding it hard to just get my brain into it. It's like I'll read a couple paragraphs and then my brain just won't let me do it. Right. And it's probably, the stress and anxiety and everything that's going on. So I am glad to hear that other people are finding it hard to read as well, because sometimes I berate myself. It's like, man, I really want to read. Why can't I read?
Yeah. Particularly, I'm finding it hard to start something new because you have to kind of make that leap into that fictional world, right? And
sure.
that takes like a dive off the diving board. You got to get yourself ready to go. And so, I'll look at the first page and look at the first, but once you get into the 9 realms, you can just stay there. You don't have to leave it. You don't have to get into a new fictional world. You can just hang out there for quite a while.
Yes, and I think that's a good thing too. So let's see. Elise has a question. Was there a particular book in the series that was most difficult to write?
The first book. The first book was by far the hardest. Maybe because it was the first time I was writing a book, but I also think it was structural in that I have to take the princess from age 8 to 19. So I have to cover a lot of time, and it was hard to figure out how to do that gracefully while also building the whole world around her. And then 2, 3, and 4. If you like book 1 at all, keep going, because the other ones just start revving up and taking off.
Awesome. And just to let everyone know, I've only read book 1 of this series so far, and I really liked it. I didn't have time to read the whole series before this, which I wish I would have. If I'd have been able to read, I could have done it. I did read book 1, and I'm excited to read the rest of it. And a couple of comments. Elise said she's also finding it hard to read. She's been doing audio, which is a good suggestion as well. And Maddie says she's been rereading things, which goes to your point about being able to stay in that same world. Routine brings comfort. And she says it's nice to have all 4, which is a huge plus for a lot of people she's talked to about it. So
yeah. And you don't forget the characters or what was happening, right? I know on Netflix shows, if you have to wait a season for it to come back, you kind of, now where did it leave off? In the meantime, I've been to all these other characters and developed all these relationships, right? But by having all 4 of these, you just keep rolling along.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing about fantasy series. When you wait, it's usually at least a year in between books. Sometimes it's a lot longer than that. And then it's like, wait, I don't remember what was happening. So you have to go back and reread everything to like catch up. So that's the good thing about this too, is that you don't have to do that. Just read them all straight through.
Also, I tried really hard to make the names. I mean, an epic fantasy is going to have a lot of characters, but I tried really hard not to make the names awkward or hard to remember, because if you come back to a book 18 months or series 18 months or 2 years later, right? Who was this? I can't pronounce this name right. But, Thalen, Cerulia, Cressa, they're pretty easy names.
Yes, they definitely are. And so Maddie has a question. That's the wrong one. I already showed that one. Somebody put something else up at the same time. If you could dip your foot into another genre, what would it be?
Maybe historical fiction, because there's such a crossover of thinking about a world without electricity and without all the common, but I would really love to write a heist novel, and I wanted to do that before. I'm watching Money Heist now on Netflix, and it's quite a lot of fun. Although now as a writer, I can see when they're just padding scenes and slowing things down, I've learned so much. But I really like heists. I really like robberies. I think, they're exciting.
I am also like super into heists. So I would love for you to write a heist book, because I love anything with a heist in it. I'm into it.
I've been toying with an idea of a heist to steal the negative of the Wizard of Oz.
Ooh, that sounds cool.
Well, I can't figure out how they do it, though, is the problem.
Keep thinking on it. Keep thinking on it. And so Maddie also says that she likes that she's not forced, or going back to talking about books. And so she likes the fact that she won't be forced to reread things a million times to make sure all the details are right before you get to the next one. And she says that was the downfall of Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, which, I would say more George R.R. Martin, because I don't remember anything happening in Game of Thrones. I'm gonna have to read all 5 of those books before if he ever puts out another one.
And then he creates another country and a whole nother set of characters, and you want to say, stop already. I know you are incredibly inventive, but let's start closing some of these storylines rather than opening more and more. But who am I? Advice.
Sure. And for new people who have joined, Elise wants to know if you're working on anything new now. And Sarah said she is. She can't talk too much about it, but is working on some stuff.
I finished with my agent right now. So yeah.
We can look forward to seeing more from you.
Right.
Hopefully.
Right.
So that looks like it was all the questions. We're right at 45 minutes. So Sarah, again, all 4 books. Here they are: Queen in Hiding, The Queen of Raiders, A Broken Queen, Cerulean Queen. They're all 4 out right now, which is really amazing. And you can purchase all of them right now if you want to at our bookshop site. So they're all on bookshop.org/shop/Chubby and Coos. We have a list there for author events. All 4 books are on there. So please buy them. If you missed it earlier, Sarah said she will sign book plates. So if you want personalized signed copies of these books, Sarah's willing to do that. You'll have to email us for that so that we can coordinate and get that info. And so here's our email address if you want to get personalized signed copies as well. And a lot of folks are saying thank you. Elise says thanks. Nicole says thanks. Maddie says thanks. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us. It seems like everyone enjoyed it. And Nicole's asking about Libro. I believe these books are on Libro.fm as well. And so our Libro site is, I will put it up here real quick, type it in, Libro.fm/Chubby and Coos.
While you're doing that, I will say to anybody listening, when you're wondering what can you do in this very difficult environment, you can support independent bookstores. They are the place that provides community, which we're missing so much right now, and the life of the mind, facts, education, reading. So wherever you live in the country, of course, you can support Chubby and Coos, and I hope you also support your closest independent bookstore.
I agree. Indie bookstores, we clearly want them to survive. Right? Want mine to survive. I want all of them to survive. So yeah. Please support.
We could do without a few pizza restaurants in the New World. We cannot lose a single independent bookstore.
I totally agree. And if people want to find you, find your work, what's the best way? I know you have a website. This is the website here.
How prepared you are. I'm so glad. That is my website that my son helped me make. From there, you can get to my Twitter, you can get to my Instagram, you can get to my Facebook. I'm supposed to be all over social media, and I try. So I
know it's hard to keep up with. It's like a full-time job to keep up with social media.
You know, you start to make a comment and then you say, oh, this is too silly, or I'm going to get in trouble if I say this, you know. So it's always a little bit of a tightrope, but I'd love to have more followers. So please.
So yes, these are Sarah's Twitter and Instagram accounts here on the screen. On Twitter, it's just _ and on Instagram, there's a dot between her name. That's pretty much the only difference between Twitter and Instagram. And, you've seen her name on the screen this whole time. That's how it's spelled. You can search her on Facebook as well. And again, Sarah's website is just sarahkozloff.com. So thank you so much, Sarah. This was a really great conversation. I enjoyed meeting you, talking to you. Thank you for spending time with us today.
Well, I've never been in New Orleans, but when we go to travel, I will be sure to stop by.
Yes, please do. New Orleans is a fun town. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.
Have a good evening. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining. See you next time.